The Imperial Genome Institute had been designed to make visitors feel insignificant. Its central chamber rose through 40 levels of transparent crystal, each floor suspended around a column of pale light in which streams of genetic data drifted like silver rain. Above it all, beyond the curved ceiling, 3 artificial moons moved across the morning sky of Varethis, their surfaces reflecting the gold and white towers of the capital. Princess Seraya disliked the building immediately. "It smells like sterilized fear," she said. The royal physician walking beside her nearly dropped his scanner. "Your Highness, fear has no measurable scent." "Then your equipment is outdated." Her long, elegant ears tilted slightly as she smiled. Aside from those ears, she might easily have passed for a human woman. Her skin was fair, her silver blonde hair fell over one shoulder, and her blue eyes carried the restless curiosity of someone who had spent most of her life escaping lessons, ceremonies, and carefully arranged conversations. Behind her, 6 royal guards marched in perfect formation. Their black armor whispered with every step as adaptive plates shifted around their bodies. Queen Elyra followed among them, calm and magnificent in a dark ceremonial gown threaded with living metal. Tiny constellations moved across the fabric whenever she breathed. The examination was supposed to be routine. Every member of the royal bloodline underwent a complete genetic scan once each year. The tradition had begun after the Red Plague nearly erased the ruling families of 3 allied systems. Since then, no monarch trusted appearances, symptoms, or good fortune. Seraya climbed onto the circular scanning platform and looked at the ring of nervous scientists surrounding her. "Will this hurt?" "No, Your Highness," said Dr. Velan. "That is what palace dentists say. This is not dentistry." An encouraging beginning. A few younger technicians laughed before remembering that the Queen was present. Their smiles vanished so quickly that Seraya wondered whether royal discipline included facial paralysis. Dr. Velan activated the scanner. Thin bands of blue light rose around the princess, passing through skin, bone, and blood without touching them. Above the platform, a holographic image of her body appeared, surrounded by twisting chains of luminous symbols. The Institute's central intelligence began comparing her genome against 12,000 years of royal records. "Identity confirmed," the machine announced. "Seraya Elyra Velan, first heir to the celestial throne." Seraya folded her arms. "It sounds disappointed." The Queen almost smiled. The first stage ended normally. No cellular degeneration, no hereditary disease, no trace of forbidden nanites, parasitic spores, or assassins clever enough to disguise themselves as harmless proteins. Then the second stage began. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. Dr. Velan leaned closer to the display. Another chime followed. One of the technicians frowned. "That is unusual." "How unusual?" the Queen asked. The technician swallowed. "Probably a calibration issue, Majesty." The display flickered. Several genetic strands turned red. Seraya watched the scientists exchange glances. "Should I begin preparing a dramatic final speech?" "No," Dr. Velan said too quickly. The Institute intelligence spoke again. "Paternal lineage mismatch." Silence fell. Dr. Velan's fingers moved across the controls. "Repeat comparison." The hologram vanished, then reappeared. "Paternal lineage mismatch. Compare against secondary royal archive." "Mismatch confirmed." The Queen took one step toward the platform. "Explain." Dr. Velan looked as though he would have preferred a meteor impact. "The princess's maternal markers are consistent with the royal line. There's no doubt she is your biological daughter." "And the paternal markers?" The doctor did not answer. Seraya's expression changed. The humor remained in her eyes, but it had become thinner, more cautious. "Doctor." He ordered the system to search every registered species in the Imperial database. Millions of genetic profiles flowed across the chamber walls. The process should have taken several minutes. It ended in 4 seconds. A single symbol appeared above Seraya. A blue planet. No one moved. Dr. Velan whispered, "That is impossible." The Institute intelligence answered with mechanical patience. Paternal genome identified. Species classification. Human. One of the guards turned his head as if expecting a human to step out from behind a medical cabinet and apologize. Seraya stared at the floating image of Earth. She had seen the planet in old diplomatic archives, a distant world whose people were considered inventive, reckless, and strangely proud of beverages containing dangerous amounts of caffeine. "You are saying," she began slowly, "that I am half human." "Genetic contribution, 49.8%, the machine replied. Seraya glanced at her hands. "Does this mean I am legally allowed to complain about everything?" Nobody laughed. Dr. Velan initiated the scan again, then again. He replaced the primary sensors, dismissed the central intelligence, and ordered 3 independent laboratory systems to repeat the analysis. Each result appeared with the same cold certainty: human. Queen Elyra stood motionless beneath the drifting genetic light. For the first time in Seraya's memory, her mother did not look like a monarch. She looked like someone staring at a ghost. Seraya stepped down from the platform. "Mother," she said quietly, "who was he?" The Queen's gaze remained fixed on the image of Earth. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely louder than the machine's. "A man who died before you were born." The palace sealed the Genome Institute before the final test had finished printing. Armored doors descended over every entrance. Communication channels were cut, and the scientists were ordered to surrender their personal devices to royal security. Even the cleaning drones were inspected, though one protested in a cheerful synthetic voice that it had never participated in treason and was only responsible for polishing difficult corners. Seraya stood beside the examination platform while the last holographic result turned slowly above her head. Human paternal lineage confirmed. The words had lost none of their weight. Queen Elyra dismissed everyone except Dr. Velan and Captain Oris, commander of the Royal Guard. The chamber emptied in uneasy silence. Some scientists avoided looking at the princess. Others stared too long, as though human ancestry might suddenly reshape her face. Seraya touched one of her long ears. "They are still here," she said. Dr. Velan blinked. "What?" "My ears. Everyone keeps looking at me as if they expect them to fall off." Captain Oris, a broad-shouldered veteran with a scar across his chin, cleared his throat. "Your Highness, no one believes your ears are in immediate danger." "That is comforting. Please include it in the official report." The Queen did not react. She stood beneath the column of genetic light, her face pale and distant. "Seal the raw data," she ordered. "No copies, no transmissions." Dr. Velan hesitated. "Majesty, the Central Intelligence automatically distributes royal medical records to the Succession Archive." "Then disconnect it," a warning tone sounded from the ceiling. "Disconnection from Succession Archive requires unanimous authorization from 3 royal officials," the Institute Intelligence announced. Seraya looked upward. "You have excellent timing." "I do not possess timing. I possess scheduling functions." "Even worse." The Queen provided her authorization. Seraya added hers, and Captain Oris summoned the Chancellor through an encrypted channel. Minutes later, the connection was severed, but the damage had already begun. Somewhere inside the palace network, access logs showed that an unidentified user had attempted to open the princess's results twice. Captain Oris's expression hardened. "Someone knows." "Someone suspects," Elyra corrected. Seraya turned toward her. "You knew." The Queen's eyes met hers. "You knew there was a human," Seraya continued. "You did not look surprised by the species. You looked surprised that the truth survived." Dr. Velan suddenly found a nearby diagnostic panel fascinating. Elyra walked to the chamber's transparent wall. Far below, The capital stretched beneath the morning sky. Anti-gravity transports moved between towers, and immense orbital elevators rose like silver threads toward the clouds. "There was a man," she said at last. "His name was Daniel Cross." The name felt strangely ordinary against the grandeur of the palace. "He came from Earth during the Seravan War," the Queen continued. "He was an engineer attached to a humanitarian fleet. His people were not allies of the Empire then, merely observers." "Humans rarely observe quietly," Captain Oris muttered. Seraya glanced at him. "You have met many?" "One. And he stole my sidearm to repair a heater." "Did it work?" "For 6 years." Seraya almost smiled, but her attention returned to her mother. "Was Daniel Cross my father?" Elyra's jaw tightened. "He died 27 years ago." "That was not my question." Before the Queen could answer, the Institute doors trembled under an external override. A red security symbol appeared across the chamber. "Imperial Council authorization detected," the intelligence announced. Captain Oris cursed softly. They moved quickly. The doors opened, revealing Chancellor Varek and 5 council ministers surrounded by ceremonial guards. Varek was thin, elderly, and dressed in robes that contained more metals than fabric. His long ears were folded tightly against his silver hair. "Majesty," he said, bowing, "we received a succession anomaly alert." "An error," Elyra replied. Varek's gaze moved to the human symbol still floating above the scanner. "A remarkably specific error." Seraya stepped between them. "Apparently I am nearly half human." The ministers stiffened. She continued, "The remaining half is considering becoming offended." Varek ignored the joke. "If the result is authentic, it affects the lineage statutes." "It affects nothing," the Queen said. "It may affect everything." The Chancellor demanded an independent review. Elyra refused. Their voices remained controlled, but the chamber seemed to shrink around them as legal phrases sharpened into threats. The Empire's oldest laws required the heir to possess an unbroken royal genome. Human ancestry could provide rival houses with enough justification to challenge Seraya's claim. At last, Varek withdrew, but not before warning that secrecy would be impossible. When the doors closed, Seraya exhaled. "I liked him better before he spoke." "No one likes Chancellor Varek before or after he speaks," Captain Oris said. Dr. Velan quietly interrupted. He had been searching restricted military archives using Daniel Cross's name. A fragmentary record hovered above his console, damaged and heavily censored. Daniel Cross, human engineer. Clearance level, Sovereign Black. Seraya leaned closer. "What does Sovereign Black mean?" Elyra answered without turning. "It means he had access to secrets known only to the monarch." Another file appeared, this one containing a blurred image. A younger Queen Elyra stood beside a dark-haired human man wearing a damaged exploration suit. Both were laughing. Behind them, a burning city filled the horizon. Seraya studied the man's face, searching for something familiar. The archive intelligence suddenly spoke. "Additional records found. Status inconsistency detected." Dr. Velan's hands froze above the controls. "What inconsistency?" Seraya asked. "Daniel Cross was declared dead on the final day of the Seravan War. However, his identity code accessed a classified Imperial facility 11 years later." The Queen turned slowly toward the display. For the first time since the test, fear replaced grief in her eyes. "That is impossible," she whispered. The machine responded with calm certainty. Access confirmed. The classified facility lay beneath the ruins of Neuralis, a moon abandoned after the Seravan War had burned away half its atmosphere. No public map mentioned it. No military archive admitted it existed. Yet 11 years after Daniel Cross had supposedly died, his identity code had opened its doors. Seraya left the capital before sunrise. Queen Elyra had forbidden the journey. The Imperial Council had demanded that the princess remain under observation, and Captain Oris had submitted a security report containing 27 reasons why traveling to a dead moon was reckless. Seraya read the first 3, signed the bottom, and used the report as permission. "That is not how authorization works," Oris told her as their stealth vessel climbed through the capital's cloud shield. "It worked on the launch officer. The launch officer is now unconscious." He fainted from respect. Across the cabin, Dr. Velan adjusted the cases containing portable genome scanners. Beside him sat Unit M7, a palace maintenance robot with a narrow metal body, 4 folding arms, and a personality error that had never been corrected because Seraya found it entertaining. "I have analyzed the mission," M7 announced. "Our survival probability is 32%. Oris looked at it. "Why would you tell us that?" "I believed honesty would improve morale." It did not. "I will try lying. Our survival probability is delightful." The vessel entered the jump corridor. Stars stretched into white lines, and the cabin filled with the low vibration of folded space. Seraya watched the navigation glass as Varethus vanished behind them. She had left without saying goodbye to her mother. Anger had made the decision easy. Regret arrived afterward and sat quietly beside it. Daniel Cross. The name had repeated in her mind since the archive revealed the impossible access record. She had studied his blurred image until she could remember every feature. The dark hair, the tired face, the smile aimed not at the camera, but at the younger queen beside him. Seraya had searched her own reflection afterward and hated herself for looking for similarities. Neuralis appeared 6 hours later, a gray sphere wrapped in storms of metallic dust. The ruins of old defense platforms drifted above its surface like broken bones. "No active signals," Velan said. Oris checked his rifle. "That usually means either nothing is alive or something does not want to be found." M7 rotated its head. A comforting pair of possibilities. They landed near the coordinates recorded in the archive. Outside, the moon's artificial twilight painted everything in ash-colored shadows. Seraya wore a pressure cloak over her armor, its transparent energy membrane sealing around her face, while leaving her long ears outlined beneath the field. The entrance was buried beneath collapsed stone. M7 cleared the debris with 2 mechanical arms, while using a third to polish a damaged sign. "This facility has been neglected," it complained. "It was abandoned for decades," Velan said. "That is not an excuse for dust." Beneath the rubble, they found a circular door made from black alloy. There was no handle, no control panel, only a human palm symbol glowing faintly in the center. Seraya approached. "Do not touch it," Oris warned. She touched it. A beam scanned her hand, then moved across her face. "Biological relation detected," a voice said from inside the door. "Paternal access line recognized." The locks opened one after another. Oris stared at her. "One day, Your Highness, touching the dangerous object will kill us. But not today." The door slid aside. Cold air escaped from the darkness beyond, carrying the scent of metal and something older, like rain trapped in stone. Emergency lights awakened along a descending corridor. Human letters appeared beneath imperial symbols, both languages printed side by side. They entered slowly. The facility was larger than expected. Laboratories stretched beneath the moon's crust, filled with silent machines, sealed specimen chambers, and shattered holographic displays. Some equipment was alien. Some was unmistakably human. The 2 technologies had been fused together so completely that even Velan could not identify where one ended and the other began. At the center of the lowest chamber, they found a wall covered in photographs. Not official records, personal ones. Daniel repairing a reactor while 3 alien soldiers held pieces they clearly did not understand. Daniel asleep beneath a console while technicians placed tools on his chest. Daniel beside Queen Elyra, both covered in engine grease and laughing. Seraya reached toward the image but stopped before touching it. "He looked happy," she said. Velan's voice softened. So did your mother. M7 projected a small light over another photograph. I have identified a pattern. The human appears repeatedly near damaged machinery. That was his work, Seraya said. Or he caused the damage. A sound moved through the chamber. Not machinery. A footstep. Oris raised his weapon. The lights flickered, and a holographic figure appeared at the far end of the room. Daniel Cross stood there in a worn exploration suit, older than in the photographs but unmistakably the same man. The recording looked directly at Seraya. If you are seeing this, he said, then Elyra failed to keep you away. Seraya stopped breathing. The hologram smiled faintly. You must be my daughter. The hologram flickered once, as though Daniel Cross had been waiting so long that even light had grown tired of carrying his face. Seraya stood motionless before him, every question she had formed during the journey suddenly too small to speak aloud. You must be my daughter, the recording repeated, softer this time. Or someone has stolen my access code, my genetic profile, and my terrible habit of ignoring warnings. Captain Oris lowered his rifle by a fraction. At least the last part appears hereditary. Seraya glanced at him, but the remark loosened something tight inside her chest. The holographic Daniel turned toward an invisible console. If Elyra is with you, she is probably angry. If she is not with you, she is definitely angry. She is not here, Seraya whispered. The recording continued without hearing her. The truth was never meant to remain buried forever, only long enough for the Empire to survive it. Behind Daniel, fragments of the old laboratory appeared through corrupted projection layers. Soldiers moved between burning machines. Medical pods flashed red. Queen Elyra, younger and wounded, argued with someone outside the frame. Daniel's smile faded. The Seravan weapon did more than kill. It damaged the reproductive cells of nearly every noble bloodline exposed to it. Within 3 generations, the imperial houses would have vanished. Your mother refused to let the empire collapse into succession wars, so we built a solution. Dr. Velan stepped closer. A hybrid genome. Daniel nodded in the recording, almost as if answering him. Human genetic resilience combined with Elyran cellular stability. We believed the child would be stronger than either species alone. Seraya stared at the twisting genetic symbols forming beside his image. Her own genome unfolded in gold and blue strands, half human, half royal, bound together by patterns no modern scientist had ever seen. You were not an accident, Daniel said. You were hope. The chamber fell silent. Then M7 raised one arm. The statement is emotionally effective, though scientifically imprecise. Oris turned slowly. Robot. I am merely noting that hope is not measurable. Seraya's eyes remained on the hologram. Let it speak. Daniel walked closer to the recording lens. His expression changed, becoming uncertain in a way none of the official images had shown. I wanted to stay. I need you to know that. But the final experiment created something we did not understand. A temporal fracture opened around the research vessel. I ordered Elyra to leave before the anomaly consumed the moon. She believed I died when the vessel disappeared. The projection broke apart into static, then returned. I did not die. Every light in the chamber brightened. Dr. Velan looked at the ancient consoles. The archive access 11 years later. Daniel's image turned toward a star map. A point appeared beyond the outer systems, deep inside a region marked by violent gravitational distortions. The fracture returned me briefly. 11 years had passed outside, but for me it had been less than an hour. I entered this facility, recorded what I could, and discovered the anomaly was pulling me back. Each return lasted only minutes. I could not reach Elyra. I could not risk transmitting openly. Too many factions wanted the hybrid research. A warning pulse spread across the walls. M7 tilted its head. We are no longer alone. Oris immediately moved toward the entrance, his tactical display filled with descending signals. 3 ships just entered orbit. Imperial design, identification codes masked. Seraya's gaze hardened. Varek. Or someone who wants us to believe it is Varek. The hologram continued as alarms awakened throughout the facility. If you found this message, then the Council may already know what you are. They will fear you because you threaten every law they built around blood. Do not surrender your genetic data. Do not trust anyone carrying the crest of House Varek. A violent impact shook dust from the ceiling. Oris checked the corridor. Boarding charges. Dr. Velan hurriedly copied the holographic file into a portable crystal. The moment he removed it, the entire chamber changed. Hidden panels opened in the floor, revealing a sealed vault beneath the laboratory. Inside rested a human navigation core, still glowing after decades. Seraya approached it as another explosion echoed above them. The core scanned her face. Cross-lineage confirmed, it announced. Temporal coordinates available. A star map rose into the air, displaying a path through the gravitational anomaly. At its center, a single signal pulsed. Human life signs detected. Seraya felt the world narrow around that light. He is alive. Captain Oris returned from the corridor, firing 2 shots at unseen intruders. That is wonderful news, Your Highness. Unfortunately, several heavily armed people would prefer us to become less alive. M7 extended 4 tools from its arms. I am not designed for combat. A plasma bolt struck the wall beside it. The robot rotated toward the corridor. I have reconsidered my career. Seraya took the navigation core and fastened it to her armor. The holographic Daniel watched her through failing light. If you come looking for me, he said, bring your mother. The projection collapsed. The vault doors began sealing while armed figures advanced through the smoke above. Seraya looked once at the last fading image of the father she had never known, then turned toward her companions. We leave now. Oris raised his rifle. And the intruders? Seraya drew the compact energy blade hidden at her side, its white edge ignited with a sharp hum. They can file a complaint with the royal family. The first intruder reached the lower laboratory just as the vault doors finished sealing. His armor carried no insignia, but the weapons mounted along his forearms were military issue, expensive enough to reveal that whoever had sent him was not interested in subtlety. Captain Oris fired first. The plasma burst struck the man's shield and threw him backward into 2 others advancing through the smoke. Seraya moved before they recovered. Her energy blade flashed once, cutting through a rifle barrel, then twice, severing the power cells from a second attacker's armor. She drove her shoulder into him and sent him sliding across the polished floor. M7 extended a maintenance cable around another soldier's ankle. I am performing emergency structural adjustment, the robot announced. It pulled. The soldier crashed face first into the ground. Adjustment successful. Dr. Velan clutched the data crystal to his chest while crouching behind a console. Do palace maintenance units receive combat training? No, Oris said, firing over him. Apparently they receive opinions. The attackers kept coming. Seraya noticed they were avoiding lethal shots. They did not want her dead. They wanted the navigation core attached to her armor and the secrets inside her blood. That realization frightened her more than the gunfire. Oris triggered a magnetic grenade. It burst without flame, releasing a wave that dragged every loose weapon toward the ceiling. Rifles, blades, and 1 startled soldier rose into the air and slammed against the metal panels overhead. Seraya stared up. Oris shrugged. He held on too tightly. They escaped through a service tunnel hidden behind the vault. The passage twisted through the moon's crust, narrow and steep, while warning lights pulsed beneath their feet. Far above, explosions rolled through the abandoned facility as the intruders tried to cut through sealed levels. The tunnel ended beside an ancient launch chamber. A compact human shuttle rested inside, half buried beneath dust. Its hull was scarred, its windows dark, and one wing appeared to have been repaired with a material suspiciously similar to kitchen plating. M7 examined it. "This vessel is not safe." Seraya approached the hatch. "Can you repair it?" "I did not say it was broken. I said it was not safe. Those are different problems." The navigation corps sent a blue pulse toward the shuttle. Systems awakened one by one. The hatch opened with a reluctant groan, revealing a cockpit built for human proportions. Daniel's voice emerged from the console. "Emergency launch protocol recognized." Seraya froze. It was only a pre-recorded interface, but hearing him speak again tightened her throat. "Destination?" the shuttle asked. She inserted the temporal coordinates. The cockpit lights turned red. "Warning. Requested route crosses unstable gravitational territory. Estimated survival probability, 18%. M7 climbed aboard behind her. "My earlier estimate was optimistic." Oris sealed the hatch as plasma fire struck the launch chamber doors. The shuttle rose unevenly, shuddering as though offended by the idea of flight. Dr. Velan strapped himself into a seat and stared at the cracked instrument panel. "Did humans build all their ships like this?" "No," Seraya said. The console sparked. "Some were worse." They launched seconds before the chamber collapsed. The shuttle tore through Neuralis's thin atmosphere while 3 enemy ships turned to intercept. Their weapons lit the darkness with red streaks. Oris took control of the rear guns. "Princess, I hope human recklessness is part of your inheritance." Seraya gripped the controls. "Mother says I inherited enough recklessness already." She pushed the engines beyond their safety limits. The shuttle dropped beneath the first pursuer, rolled through a field of orbital debris, and skimmed so close to a ruined defense platform that its broken antennas scraped sparks across the hull. One enemy ship struck the debris and vanished in a silent bloom of fire. The second locked missiles onto them. M7 opened an external maintenance hatch and released every spare component in storage. Bolts, panels, tools, and a sealed waste container scattered behind the shuttle. The missiles struck the cloud and detonated. Oris looked at the robot. "Was that deliberate?" "I discarded unnecessary mass." "The waste container?" "Especially unnecessary." The final pursuer followed them beyond the moon and into open space. Ahead, the temporal coordinates formed a narrow corridor of distorted stars. Light bent around an invisible wound in space, folding in impossible directions. Dr. Velan studied the readings. "That anomaly is expanding." At its center, the human life signal pulsed once, then weakened. Seraya activated the jump drive. The enemy ship fired. A blast tore through the shuttle's rear shield as they crossed the anomaly's edge. Space twisted around them. The stars stretched, shattered, and multiplied. Seraya saw the cockpit age and become new again in the same heartbeat. Oris appeared old for a second, then young, then exactly himself. M7's head rotated backward. "I have detected tomorrow." "What happens?" Velan shouted. "We regret this decision." The shuttle was pulled deeper. The pursuing ship tried to follow, but the anomaly folded around it. Its hull became a line of silver light and disappeared. Then all motion stopped. Beyond the cockpit window floated a vast research vessel trapped inside a sphere of frozen lightning. Its hull carried both human markings and the crest of Queen Elyra. The navigation corps spoke quietly. "Vessel identified. Horizon." A docking signal awakened across the darkness. Seraya stared at the ship where her father had been waiting outside ordinary time. Then a second signal appeared behind it. Not human. Not imperial. Something enormous was moving inside the anomaly with them. The enormous shape moved behind the horizon without engines, heat, or any signal that ordinary sensors could understand. It passed through the frozen lightning as if the storm were only a reflection, revealing a body made of overlapping rings darker than space. Symbols burned along its surface, appearing for an instant before time itself seemed to erase them. Dr. Velan leaned toward the console. "That vessel is older than the Empire." Captain Oris kept one hand near his weapon. How can you tell? It is ignoring every law of physics we currently respect. M7 rotated its head toward the anomaly. Perhaps it has not received the updated regulations. The Horizon transmitted another docking request. Seraya accepted before caution could organize itself into an argument. Their battered shuttle drifted toward an opening in the research vessel's side, while the unknown structure circled at a distance. The docking clamps locked with a deep metallic impact. Inside the Horizon, the corridors remained bright and strangely untouched. A cup floated above a table, droplets of dark liquid suspended beside it. A wrench hung in the air halfway to the floor. Even dust had been caught between moments. Seraya reached toward one of the droplets. Oris caught her wrist. Do not touch it. You are becoming repetitive. You are making repetition necessary. The navigation core guided them deeper. Each door recognized Seraya's genetic signature, opening with Daniel's recorded voice announcing increasingly unhelpful messages. Authorized user accepted. Try not to break anything. If this is Elyra, I am sorry about the reactor. Seraya looked at the ceiling. He recorded apologies in advance. Velan examined a scorched panel. He may have needed many. They entered the central laboratory and found Daniel Cross inside a transparent stasis chamber. He looked almost exactly as he had in the holograms. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples, a short beard, and a human exploration uniform marked by old burns and repairs. One hand rested near the emergency release, as though he had tried to reach it before time stopped. Seraya approached slowly. For weeks, he had existed as a name, a genetic result, a face made of light. Seeing him breathe turned every possibility into something terrifyingly real. Velan connected his scanner to the chamber. His cellular activity is stable, but the temporal field is attached to the anomaly outside. If we release him incorrectly, he could age decades in seconds. M7 extended a small tool. I can assist. Oris stared at it. You repaired fountains yesterday. Water moves forward through time. I possess relevant experience. The unknown vessel outside emitted a pulse. The horizon shook. Frozen objects dropped at once. The cup shattered, the suspended liquid splashed across the floor, and alarms awakened after 27 years of silence. The stasis chamber began failing. Velan worked frantically across the controls. The external pulse is collapsing the field. Seraya placed her hand against the glass. The navigation core attached to her armor responded, sending her genetic pattern into the chamber. Golden light moved through the human machinery. Cross-lineage accepted, the system announced. Biological synchronization available. Velan looked at her. The chamber can anchor him to your timeline. How? Physical contact when the field opens. Oris stepped forward. What is the risk? Velan hesitated. Doctor. She may be pulled into his temporal state. Seraya did not move away. The chamber opened with a breath of cold air. She reached inside and took Daniel's hand. The laboratory vanished. For one impossible instant, Seraya saw fragments of his life. Daniel arriving on Varethus beneath a sky filled with burning ships. Daniel teaching alien children how to repair a water purifier while accidentally flooding an entire shelter. Daniel and Elyra arguing over genetic equations, then laughing over food neither of them knew how to cook. Daniel touching the Queen's face before entering the horizon alone. Then Seraya saw herself as an infant in Elyra's arms, not through memory, but through a message Daniel had received during one of his brief returns. He had watched it again and again until the recording failed. The vision broke. Seraya fell backward, pulling Daniel from the chamber. Oris caught them both before they struck the floor. Daniel coughed, opened his eyes, and looked around. Did the reactor explode? M7 answered first. Not recently. Daniel stared at the robot. That is not reassuring. His gaze moved to Seraya. He studied her long ears, her silver blonde hair, and the human features hidden within the royal face. Recognition arrived slowly, followed by disbelief. Seraya? She could barely answer. You know my name? I had a recording. His voice cracked. You were very small. I improved. Daniel laughed once, then covered his eyes with one hand as emotion overtook him. Seraya knelt beside him, uncertain whether to embrace him or demand answers for every missing year. He made the choice for her, reaching toward her face but stopping before touching it. My daughter. The words were quiet, almost frightened. Seraya placed his hand against her cheek. Behind them, the alarms grew louder. Oris looked toward the observation window. I hate to interrupt the most complicated family reunion in Imperial history, but the ancient impossible ship is approaching. Daniel turned toward the dark rings outside. All warmth left his face. That is not a ship. Velan stared at him. Then what is it? Daniel struggled to his feet. It is the machine that created the temporal fracture, and if it has awakened, it has already detected Seraya. The dark structure unfolded around the horizon, its rings spreading like the opening jaws of something vast. Daniel looked at his daughter for only a second before moving to the controls. We need to leave before it decides she belongs to it. The ancient machine closed around the horizon, its black rings sliding across one another until every star beyond the observation window disappeared. Symbols burned along the inner surfaces, not written in any language Seraya knew, yet their meaning pressed against her thoughts with cold certainty. Hybrid identified. Continuation required. She staggered as the message entered her mind. Daniel caught her arm. Do not answer it. I was not planning to. Good. I answered at once. That is why we are here. He reached the main console and began waking systems that had slept for decades. The horizon groaned around them as engines struggled against the temporal field. Captain Oris took the weapon station. Dr. Velan monitored Seraya's neural activity, and M7 connected itself to the reactor through a maintenance port. I have located several critical failures, the robot announced. Can you repair them? Daniel asked. I can criticize the previous repairs. Daniel glanced at the exposed wiring. Those were mine. I suspected as much. The machine sent another pulse through the ship. Seraya's vision fractured. She saw thousands of possible futures. Herself, seated on the celestial throne. Herself imprisoned beneath the palace. Herself leading armies of humans and aliens. Herself alone while civilizations burned in her name. Daniel pulled her back from the console. It does not predict the future. It offers choices until you surrender. What does it want? The Saravans found it before the war. It was built by a civilization that survived extinction by rewriting other species. The weapon that poisoned the royal bloodlines was only one of its tools. When your mother and I created you, we accidentally produced the genetic balance it had been searching for. Velan looked horrified. A biological key. Seraya stared at the rings surrounding them. Then let us disappoint it. Daniel smiled faintly. You sound like Elyra. The Horizon's communication system suddenly came alive. Queen Elyra appeared above the console, her image breaking beneath interference. Behind her stood royal officers and several members of the Imperial Council. Seraya, she said, breathless with relief. Then she saw Daniel. For a moment, the Queen forgot the Empire, the watching counselors, and every secret she had carried for 27 years. You are alive. Daniel touched the holographic image, though his fingers passed through it. I am very difficult to get rid of. Elyra laughed through tears. I remember. Chancellor Varric stepped into view. The princess must return immediately. Her genetic status requires judgment under the lineage statutes. Seraya faced him. Weeks earlier, such words would have frightened her. Now they sounded small compared with the machine surrounding the ship. My blood is not a crime, she said. It saved your empire before I was born, and it may save it again today. Varric began to protest, But Elyra silenced him with a glance. Daniel explained the machine's weakness. Its control intelligence could only enter biological systems that responded to its commands. Seraya carried the necessary genetic structure, but she also carried human unpredictability and Elyran neural discipline. She could open a connection and reject it from within. "It may destroy the link," Daniel said, "or it may destroy you." Oris tightened his grip on the weapon's controls. "I officially dislike this plan." "You dislike every plan," Seraya replied. "I have survived because of that." She placed both hands on the neural interface. The machine entered her mind like a collapsing universe. It showed her power without limits. It promised to repair the damaged bloodlines, end disease, silence rebellion, and make her reign eternal. Seraya understood then why generations had hidden behind laws of purity. Fear made control look like safety. She thought of her mother protecting a secret until it became a prison. She thought of Daniel trapped beyond time, still watching a damaged recording of the daughter he had never held. She thought of herself joking whenever uncertainty became too painful to face. "I am not your continuation," she said into the darkness. "I am my own beginning." She opened every channel in her mind and sent the machine the one pattern it could not organize: grief mixed with love, courage mixed with doubt, royal discipline tangled with human absurdity. M7 added a surge from the reactor at the exact moment Daniel inverted the temporal field. The rings shuddered. M7's voice echoed through the ship. "I have improved the machine." Oris fired the Horizon's weapons into the opening structure. "You destroyed it." "That is sometimes an improvement." The ancient rings collapsed inward, folding through their own dimensions. Frozen lightning erupted across the anomaly. Daniel tore the Horizon free as the machine vanished into a point of darkness. Then into nothing. When they returned to Varithis, the truth could no longer be hidden. Elyra addressed the Empire beside Daniel and Seraya, revealing the war, the poisoned bloodlines, and the human engineer who had helped save their civilization. Varek attempted to invoke the old statutes, but the council rejected him after learning that his agents had attacked Seraya on Neuralis to seize the hybrid research. He was removed from office before finishing his longest objection, which Seraya privately considered a public service. The lineage statutes were rewritten. Membership in the royal family would no longer be measured by genetic purity, but by duty to the people. Human diplomats arrived months later, bringing gifts, questions, and an alarming quantity of coffee for Daniel. At the first joint ceremony between the Empire and Earth, Elyra stood between Daniel and Seraya beneath the palace stars. The queen and the human were older, changed, and uncertain of what their lost years allowed them to become. But they began with conversation, rather than promises. Seraya watched them smile at one another. M7 approached wearing the medal it had received for saving the Horizon. "It is too small," the robot complained. "You asked for 2. "I performed at least 3 heroic actions." Seraya laughed, no longer using humor to hide from the truth, but to welcome it. She looked beyond the palace windows, where human and imperial ships moved together through the evening sky. The test that had once threatened to divide the Empire had revealed something far greater than the identity of her father. It had shown Seraya that inheritance was not a command written in blood. It was a question each generation answered for itself, and for the first time she was ready to answer it.